Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We are back to another episode of The Journey Within. I am your host, Andrea Escobar, your spiritual guide and mental health intuitive. I'm so excited about today's episode. The incredible badass that we're going to talk to today, I feel like she doesn't need an introduction, but just so that you guys get an idea on what, she's kind of doing and how she's killing life. Not only is she taking from her own personal experience, but she is transforming the way that people express themselves, how they show up, and really taking people out of this kind of victim place into this empowered, I am me place. And I love that. I'm so incredibly honored to be able to record today with Gabriella Ortega, who I just found out comes from her family's Cuban. So you guys know that as someone from South Florida, I definitely love when I get to connect with different people from South America. All right, Gaby, take it away. Introduce yourself. Tell everyone what you're doing right now, and then we'll jump into kind of everything.
Oh my God, that was like such an amazing introduction.
Oh,
Thank you so much. I'm going to just bring you with me everywhere, so I hope that's okay.
Yes, I could totally put myself in a little pocket and just go with you everywhere.
Oh my God, I would love that. Yeah, so thank you so much. So it's kind of interesting. People ask me this question, like, tell us about you. And I'm like, oh my God, what, where do I start? So long story short, I'm a childhood trauma survivor, also trauma that happened later on in college and throughout my life, really. I developed some mental health issues, from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, lots of different things going on. Struggled really, really badly with alcoholism throughout my 20s because I was trying to numb out so much of the pain that I was experiencing, the feeling like I had no direction, feeling like I didn't know who I was, that I was worthless, that the things that had happened to me had now changed me permanently. And now I was like this broken person. And so looking back, it makes me really sad, but actually for a majority of my life, I really, really struggled with low self-worth, depression, anxiety, and all of these different things that come from having a very chaotic childhood, or maybe things were really great, like in front of the house, but when you close the doors and you're actually living with your family, it's quite dysfunctional. And there are many things. My father really suffered from his own mental illness. He is bipolar, has bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder because he had his own trauma growing up as well. And so his severe depression and all of that really affected me growing up, along with bullying that actually lasted from the time I could remember up until 8th grade, when I was suicidal and I was, really in a bad place. And I finally had, convinced my parents that like mental health, I needed to like get out of this school and like find myself and find my happiness, because otherwise it was not going to be a good thing. And then my 20s, I was raped and sexually assaulted in college. I was assaulted multiple times, not really realizing it too until the Me Too movement happened, and recognizing, oh my God, many of these interactions, because of my trauma, I was so go with the flow. I was like, if someone wanted to be with me and I was on a date and I didn't know them, I would let it happen because I had such low self-worth, because I didn't know any other way of operating, and realizing that it didn't feel good and it wasn't aligned with my inner self. Years later, because I had never been taught that like consent was something that had to be like shouted from the roofs, like, you really want to do this, it should always be like that hell yeah feeling, and not, I don't want to disappoint somebody, or I don't want somebody to think I'm not being a team player or whatever. And those beliefs that really were rooted in the beliefs that I were really driven home into my core belief system as a child around be pleasing, be nice, be sweet, be, polite, don't share too much, don't ask for too much. And things that as a girl and as a woman, we're really taught, hide yourself, make yourself smaller, like you're here to be in the eyes pleasing to someone else and not for yourself. And so, even though those weren't like direct messages I had received, because my mom was very supportive of me and loving, and so my dad loved me as much as he could, and, to the capacity that he was able. But that was society's messaging. And so this kind of combination of like the trauma, not having any boundaries, not really having anybody to lean on or to guide me, ended up really, I fell down a rabbit hole like anybody would, and got really lost. And I remembered at a certain point in my 20s having like a moment where, I had gotten so severely depressed after I graduated college, because I was like, I don't like the degree I have. I don't want to pursue this. I got a degree in acting. My whole life I've been a performer. I played classical piano in Carnegie Hall when I was 15. I toured the world singing, or not the world, but Italy. It felt like the world at the time. I was 15, singing opera with like these really big name maestros from New York City. And I did musical theater, and I was really in the performing space. And I didn't realize, now I do, that acting was my escape. It was my place where I belonged. It was a place where I found acceptance in the nerdy theater world. It was the only place I was able to really find myself. And, but it wasn't something I really wanted to pursue as a passion. It wasn't my purpose. And so I graduated from college with this kind of thing where everybody told me what to do. They were like, go to school. You're going to find a partner. You're going to get married. You're going to have some kind of career. You're going to be this, that, and the third. You're going to have kids, and that's going to be your life. And I was following like a really good rule follower. And I was like, great, I'm hitting all the marks, got straight A's in school, got a degree from a great college. And then it was like, there was no one left to tell me what to do next. And I'm like, wait, this whole time I've had like people to schools, like my mom, my dad, like people telling me what my next steps were. And I was just like blindly following it. And then I realized, oh my God, I don't want to do any of this stuff. This isn't me. And then who am I if I'm not the performer, the actor, the pianist, the golden child, that I've always been? Like, who the fuck am I really? And I had this like, I call it like a quarter century crisis. Like at 25, I fucking had a meltdown. I was so depressed. I was like binge drinking every day. I was partying. And at a certain point, the partying, those aren't real friends. They don't really care about you. They're there to, party with you and forget, and to do things that are going to keep you distracted from actually looking at what you need to look at, which is like, why am I the way that I am? And so I was really good at like putting it off for a long time. And then I met my partner, who's now my fiance, and I fell in love with him. And I realized like, oh my God, I'm going to annihilate this relationship if I don't figure out how to get on top of this, how to figure out my drinking situation, how to figure out my healing situation, how to figure out what do I want to do with my life? But I did know I wanted to be with him. And I felt the relationship really breaking, because at a certain point after like 2 years, because we were no longer in that beginning stages where we were like partying together and drinking and going out and, oh my God, we drank too much last night, and oh my God, and like this and that. It was like, okay, now we're like 20, I'm 27, or 28, like 20, no, I was like 27. And I was like, it's not cute anymore. It's like sad. You're not like 18 or 16 where you're like getting wasted. It's like, you're a sad adult woman drinking 2 bottles of wine at night, watching like CSI. Like we're way past like anything resembling like normalcy here. And even other nights, I started switching to vodka. And that's when I really knew I started like, I was really going down a bad path. So I had like a reckoning, and I just realized I was going to lose everything that I really loved, and I had to figure it out. And it was like time to fucking buckle in and like do the work that I knew was going to be painful. I knew it was going to be really hard. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who to go to. But I said, okay, I'm just going to try some things, and I'm going to try. The drinking was the last thing I was able to give up. It was really a crutch for me. And so throughout my healing journey, I would kind of like go back and forth between that. But I saw, therapists, psychologists. I went in and like did different kinds of like energy healings. I studied, I learned meditation, and eventually led me back into school. And so I went back to school in 2016, and I got my master's in clinical psychology with a double specialization in childhood development and trauma. And it blew my mind wide open. I went through such a profound healing during my master's program, because for the first time, I wasn't relying on a therapist or psychologist with their own shit and their own baggage and their own stuff to communicate, to have to know enough to communicate with me, to be able to teach me the things I needed to teach. I was getting it straight from the literature. And I was actually reading directly from the masters. And I was like, yes, this is Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk and Deb Dana and, polyvagal theory. I'm forgetting his name right now. But I mean, all the people who are doing cutting edge research on all of this stuff. And I was like, great. So I started self-healing and I started using a holistic kind of way of approaching it, not just through clinical therapy and clinical psychology and that trauma-focused lens, but also studying neurobiology and neuroscience, and also approaching it from a holistic lens in plant medicine, which, by the way, people don't want you to know, 73 or 77%, you can look this up, of all synthesized pharmaceuticals are made by plant medicines that have just been amped up with chemicals. And they actually, the reason why many of these plant-based medicines are not available to be sold as medicine is because what they do is these pharmaceutical companies patent the chemical compound that is in the plant. They basically patent the plant and they buy the plant. And so anybody who tries to heal or call it healing or medicine using plants, the same plants that they use to create their medicine that has a bunch of other fucked up shit in it, they get sued, and it's not because it's unhealthy or because the plant medicine doesn't work or because it's because pharmaceutical companies own those plants. And if you start telling people you can heal with things like, I don't know, cannabis or mushrooms or
you just blew my mind.
Yeah, I learned that in my master's program, and I literally threw my thing. I'm gone. I'm out of here. And I almost walked out the door because I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. That's insane. And I had been on medication, and look, it really helped me with my depression in high school. I was so severely depressed. I needed that help. I was taking, I think Lexapro at the time. It was really beneficial for me. And I think there's a place for pharmaceuticals. I think there is, but there needs to be space for holistic remedies too, for those of us who may not want to do pharmaceuticals as the first line of defense, or who just have bad reactions to some of those pharmaceuticals. You can have incredible healing from, and studies are now backing it up, from psilocybin treatments, which is magic mushrooms, from ketamine treatments. I know the owner of the ketamine facility in Los Angeles, the ketamine clinic, the guy who actually started it. His son is a friend of mine. And
you need to hook me up. I want to talk to
girl,
him.
it's life-changing. Something like 80% or 90% of symptoms are gone within the first treatment of severe depression from people who have, let's say, been in war. People who have been severely traumatized. So really there's this battle, and we can, talk all day about this, but anyway, so basically, long story short, I went back to school, I got my degree, I started working with people in the clinical space, realizing, oh my God, the traditional mental health system is broken, as we all know. And none of the things I was able to do, I wasn't able to do a lot of the things I wanted to do when I was working with clients, because insurance doesn't cover it. Insurance doesn't pay for it. I wasn't getting paid, by the way. I was an intern for 2 years. But that's the whole thing, is that traditional systems won't recognize certain kinds of approaches that are much more trauma informed, like yoga and breath work and different kinds of medicines that you would want to include in this healing process. They don't include traditional psychological approaches, clinical approaches, neuroscience, neurobiology, the idea of understanding how the human species has developed over centuries, understanding what your survival mechanisms are that also play into the psychology of what you're experiencing. And so what we're giving people is kind of one small piece of the healing when we do psychology. But what we really have to do is understand a more holistic frame, especially working with trauma, which I believe everyone has trauma, whether it's yours, whether it's carried in your DNA from intergenerational trauma from your family, from your parents, all of the grandparents, things like that. You have trauma in your body stored in the cells of your DNA. It's just part of being human. We're sensitive. So, we're sensitive beings. It's really incredible. The stuff that I learned blew my mind open. I was able to really heal myself after being so disappointed from so many different practitioners and traditional therapists that just really let me down. I realized nothing was wrong with me, and that I wasn't this person forever and ever. Nothing was broken, that even though I had gone through these experiences that fundamentally really shaped me and also changed who I thought I was, that actually I've become a much more deep, much more empathic, much more capable human being because of the things, powerful because of what I've been through. And understanding that you can have both. You can have gone through really, really, really difficult times. You can have suffered. You can have made mistakes. And you can heal. You can become whoever you want to step into. You can leave that behind, and you can do certain things that are going to rewire your brain and your body so you can really be your highest self, and you can step into and consciously create a life around what works for you as an individual. And that's my goal, and that's what I do. And so now I'm in my doctoral program. I'm finishing up my second year, and my dissertation and the book I'm going to write and the research that I'm doing is all around essentially, being another Freud and trying to come up with a, replicable treatment methodology for, that's holistic based, the way that I work through trauma to help women specifically, because most literature and research is focused on men. Actually, all research really is on men, but really looking at research on and helping specifically women move through the things that they need to move through after having, experienced trauma or mental health issues like anxiety and depression and things like that, or feeling lost. So I started, the Instagram page that I have now, like in 2017, like just messing around with it because I was like on my self-healing journey. I was in school, I was learning so many things, and I was like, oh my God, this is so messed up that this information is not accessible to everybody. The most like vulnerable populations cannot afford therapy. Why aren't we on Instagram using that as a vehicle to deliver the medicine? Why aren't more of us who take the oath to do no harm and to help? Why are we not doing more? Well, because we're being abused in clinical systems that are burning us out and killing us. We just don't have the energy or the space or the capacity. But what if we can create businesses where we can ethically take care of ourselves, take care of all of our clients, push aside the red tape, and really be able to serve in a way that's different? And that's coaching. It's not therapy. We're not working with therapeutic clients, but I've worked with many people as a coach, doing post-traumatic growth work in this specific methodology. That's not treatment, but it's support and growth focused. And it has changed their lives. People who have been in therapy I had one woman who was in therapy for almost 18 years after severe childhood sexual abuse from a family member. Another woman who was in her 50s, who I worked with for about 6 months only, doing this methodology that includes hypnosis, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, trauma processing, things like that, somatic release, all of those things. She had been in therapy for 20 years, also sexually abused as a child by a family member. Never thought that she would ever have a voice, never thought she would ever be able to have a different kind of life where she felt ever happy or in control. And these two women, along with everybody else that I've worked with, not one person they had huge breakthroughs. They changed in such dramatic ways that they were never able to do with just traditional talk therapy. So my goal is, let's do this differently. Let's do it smarter, not harder. We don't need to be in therapy for 30 million years talking about our trauma, which now we know actually reinforces the trauma response. It doesn't actually, once you create your narrative, once you understand intellectually, you have to process out. You have to stop talking about it, get out of your head and into your body, and move through the processing work, and then through the work of creating who you want to become, and then do the work of stepping into that. And that is how you actually change. And if we want to change and treat, and not just treat trauma, but heal trauma, this is the way we have to approach it. So that's what I'm fighting for now. And my company, I started out mental health coaching. That's what I did. Within a few months, we had reached 6 figures and we blew up. We are, I'd say we, meaning me. There was no one else actually. Now it's a we. Now I have a whole team, which is so beautiful. But when it was just me. And I started coaching, and I said, hey, if you follow my page and any of the stuff I've been teaching about trauma, about healing, about mental health, about empowerment is helpful for you, like, let's talk. And this was before anybody was really online. Like it was before, people were kind of online coaching, but it was before COVID. So, people were very skeptical. They're like, you can't do therapy or coaching online. How is that going to be helpful? It has to be in person. And I was like, just watch. Trauma survivors, this is also about being trauma informed. Trauma survivors, it's very intense to be in a room with someone else talking about and going through some of the trauma work. It's too much. It's overwhelming. It stops people from even seeking therapeutic services or even seeking coaching services for help, because they don't want to get in a room with another person where they're going to be activated and feeling scared and feeling like vulnerable because it's too traumatizing again. I have had repeated customers or clients tell me that they felt so much safer being able to do it over Zoom, and that knowing they could shut their computer at any time and take a step away, like, made them feel safe. And like, you never know how these shifts and these developments that we have with technology, with where we're moving, we need to keep growing. We need to stop saying the old ways of doing things are the only ways of doing things, and understand that we're not a monolith, the human species. Everybody's different. Everybody's needs are different. What they want are different. So I know I've been talking your ear off, but essentially, so Om Therapy Coaching is a couple of things. It is a community, first and foremost, for anybody seeking support, empowerment, unconditional love, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood and valued. Like, that is what I want to create as a safe space for that, for anybody who wants to come and be seen and heard. Those of you on a healing journey, this is a space for you. I talk a lot about healing and trauma. I've shifted since COVID into more of a business coaching and leadership coaching model. And so I don't necessarily work with mental health clients anymore. But what's been really beautiful is that I have felt very deeply called to empower in the wake of COVID, empower and help elevate healers, especially, and really women and women identified healers, to jump into this online space where there are 7 billion people in the world who need you, who are suffering more than ever, and you can't see anybody in person. So what else are you going to do? All my friends and colleagues were like panicking. I'm like, come on, let me teach you what I've been doing. I'm making $20,000 a month, you guys. I don't know what to tell you. And none of it was misaligned. None of it, I didn't have to force anybody. Everybody's having a great time. They're happy to invest in my services. And I have really great connections with all of my community members and my clients. So why wouldn't you want to be aligned working in this kind of way where you get to really call the shots and take care of yourself in the process? So I jumped into that. I created a whole course, and now we have our signature Ignite Group program. It's our 4th round, and we're helping women step into their online entrepreneurship, open up their healing businesses, therapists, coaches, anybody, Reiki healers, yoga teachers. If you have medicine, we want to help you get the word out so you can share it. And that's really what we do now. And we just had a $100,000 launch for our newest group. We had the same happening. Like, it's, and to be able to, I know I'm not a numbers person, but to see money as energy, and to see that as energy that people are investing into this movement that I'm so passionate about, it's like, that's all money that's going back to them. And it's all going into other things that we're creating, and other, opportunities, scholarships that I give. I don't even tell anybody about half the free things I do for people. But I get to, because I have this amazing business that provides for me so abundantly, that I get to now really give back in much more intentional, bigger, more impactful ways, versus just whenever I can fit in a volunteer thing here or there as a clinical therapist who's burned out, and resentful. And so this was really the path for me. It's not for everybody. I found conscious entrepreneurship and healing in the online space to be a magical place where I've met not just incredible clients, but just like you, like amazing individuals who are out here just trying to make a difference and using the internet as a vehicle. So now we're here. I have a team of 6. We have a podcast. We're working on a retreat this year, international if we can. I'm working on a book, finishing up school research, and all of those good things, and building communities, and just trying to do what I can to make a difference, and help elevate somebody somewhere.
I feel like you're elevating a lot more people than just someone somewhere.
I hope. That's the feedback I've been getting. So I'm like, okay, I'll just keep going.
I am like I have so many selfish questions that I want to ask you. But right now I just want to first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. It's just don't even know. I had an outline of things I wanted to ask, but now I'm like, no, I know. So
it always happens.
Yes, it does. And starting off, I had read that your dad had mental illness, but this is where it's really crazy. I was diagnosed when I was 18 with bipolar and borderline. And so I love that you mentioned trauma, and you weren't so mental illness. And for
Mm.
me, I remember when I first got diagnosed, and yeah, you're taking what I'm doing right now to cope with my emotions and protecting myself, and then checking marks off of DSM, and then telling me, here you go, this is what you are. And for me at that moment, I was 18, and I'm like, oh shit, all of the qualities that I don't like about me, they're all because I'm bipolar. Cool, I don't have to take responsibility for this shit. Like, seriously, it was one of those, like, I'm free. This is all because of a chemical imbalance. This isn't me.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that until I got off pharmaceuticals, and I was connecting with different people, and everyone would be like, well, you don't understand. I'm anxious. And I started to think, what does that have to do with anything? It brought me back to that moment when I got diagnosed. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're basically saying all the things that you don't like about yourself are not your fault. It's this.
Yeah.
So
But
instead
it's
of,
pathologizing your experience. It's making it an illness. Like what? Like that's
exactly.
not, it's not.
And it became where I didn't know who I was without that identity. So when you were talking about, like, I didn't know who I was, I felt that because when I got off medication and my mom was like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. I have been listening to psychiatrists and therapists for the last, I don't know how long, tell me everything. And now you want me to decide what I want? I can't even watch a TV show without them like telling me it's okay. Like, and that's something nobody talks about. But I remember I wanted to watch a movie, and my psychiatrist was like, no, it's too stimulating. It could very much trigger a mania. We can't do that. And my thing was, I went more up. I always love when you look up bipolar disorder, they're like, periods of euphoria and depression. I'm like, why don't you say that it's mania that you like and depression that you don't like?
I
Because
was
the
gonna
reality
say,
is, I loved being manic. And the person
mania,
that says,
for those of you who don't know, mania feels amazing. And this is why a lot of like those who struggle with bipolar, diagnoses, like either don't want to take medication, which is fine. You don't have to take medication. I also think it's a gift, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But
yeah.
The mania makes you feel like God. You feel like you can do anything, but maybe that's something we need sometimes.
Like I literally go back to it and I'm like, mania is awesome. I will always say it's the most dangerous drug, and it's not a drug.
Yeah.
And people are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, I would not tell my doctor that I wasn't sleeping, because I was like, man, it's going to be fun in a few days. So I'm just going to be quiet and not say anything.
Yeah.
Sure. After about a week, I would start hearing voices and start hallucinating. So it wasn't always great. But for me, being a robot 80% of the time, I was like, who cares? I get to be God for a week. I'd rather take the odds.
It seems like a better alternative, because it also, it really numbs your ability to feel, the medication a lot of times.
So what I wanted to know was how, I don't know if your dad at all shares the approach that you not have kind of regarding mental health, but I know that for me, it's something that I struggle with a lot because I don't identify with the label. I have manic and depressive tendencies, and I say that because I've been in autopilot for 20 years. I can't erase that in 5 years or 10. Like, it's just not going to go away. So my natural tendencies are to go up. My natural tendencies are to be defensive, but that doesn't mean that I am bipolar. But when you bring this up to people, it's almost like, no, this is me. Stop telling me that I'm not, because the minute that I take away that label, you have nothing to hide behind.
Yeah. And there's an element of self-responsibility that comes into play too, where it's like, you can't really externalize your problem onto a label or onto a diagnosis, but really you have to really take stock of your whole life, and maybe why are you this way? And maybe how do I want to work through this? Or how do I want to incorporate this and integrate this into my life in a way that feels really aligned for me, but that then takes responsibility. I have a good family friend of ours who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and he goes through through very severe manic episodes. He has a wife, a young baby. They have a really great fucking system. I love his wife. She's so supportive. Whenever he feels like he's going into mania, he's a cyclist. And so for him, he's like, I'm getting on my bike. I'm going into mania. I need you to take the baby and I need you to understand that the manic episode's about to happen. And she goes, great. They have systems in place. He does what he needs to do to go through that manic episode. He knows how to process it for himself. She just has to hold space for that and just make sure that he needs to take a step away from the childcare for a minute to just go through this and then come back. And that is how he handles it, because he's so self-aware and and she's on the same team and she's like, great, and the way I think about it is like, we're neurodivergent. These are our energy cycles. These are our energetic cycles. And unless we're with somebody that can really hold space for that, it's going to be very difficult. And the real problem is like out there in the what quote unquote, normal world or whatever. It's expected that you're supposed to now just fit into that mold, and that if you don't, that's an illness. And that's not really true. You actually have the gifts of bipolar is that you have the depth that you can experience connection and emotion is profound. I will never know what it's like to feel the depths of pain that you have felt. I may not, or the highs that you have felt of joy and expansion and possibility. And in many ways, that might be like an adaptation of the mind. We don't know. We don't know if this is like part of the evolutionary process of where the human species is going. We see a lot of neurodivergence happening. And for in many ways, they're upgrades. Like, yes, it's very painful to go through manic and depression cycles. But at the same time, like you said, there's also parts of it that allow you to really shine and thrive and learn and grow. And there's elements of that work too. So it's like, how do we not throw the baby out with the bathwater? How do we really learn how to live with the way our brain and our body operates and be able to speak the same language so we can, be happy and live to the fullest as we possibly can?
Yeah, no, I love that, what you said. It took me a while to come to terms with the gifts that it offered me, because for a long time it was just the stigma that I saw.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started to see an orthomolecular psychiatrist and I
What? Wait,
yes.
What? After, tell me what that is. That's amazing.
Oh my God, look into it. I honestly, so my case was I don't try to say I'm special but it's more of the reason I say this is I've been told so much by so many people. Anytime I'm like, hey, why don't you try this? Yours wasn't as bad. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, man, I wish I had a recorder that I could just give you those 8 years so that you can see. But you know what? You do you. I tended to go up. I didn't get depressed. I probably had it an 8-year period, 3 depressive episodes. That's not a lot. But I would spend in mania 6 months, 8 months. Wow. And it was maybe 3 weeks where it was fun and joyful. The rest of the time I was having auditory and visual hallucinations.
Wow.
So my tendency, and because I've picked up on it, it's very fight or flight. When I don't want to deal with what's going on, I dissociate. My way of dissociating is literally creating an alternate reality, because what's happening right now is too much for me to deal with. Mm-hmm. That happened when my parents got separated. Yeah. What you were kind of saying about your dad, people can only do and they can only give you what they have. Yeah. And looking back now as an adult and kind of he has his own trauma. He had a really, really bad accident when he was shot in his eye. There was just a lot. It was he was in a coma for a month. There's a lot there. Also, his dad didn't have the best communication. They called him the general. So there's a lot, which explains how he showed up. But the way that I took it was the minute my mom and dad split, oh, you don't love me. You're abandoning me. So that I carried it with me. And when I was 18 and I was going to college, he's like, hey, come to Florida. We'll have a relationship. I literally relived their separation when I got to school because he wasn't able to show up in the way that I wanted him to. I thought we were finally going to have this fairy tale relationship. And
Yeah.
he was still showing up in the same way. And I'm like, what? I thought this was changing now that I'm here.
No, I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had to also come to terms with accepting him the way that he is and not the way that I want him to be. And it just, now that I can accept him the way that he is, our relationship has shifted so much where I can say, hey, what you said, I didn't like it. Or this, where in the past I would have been like, oh my God, if I say this, he's going to get mad at me and he's never going to want to talk to me again. And I would escalate that. But with that, I was on a lot of medication. I was on literally every antipsychotic that you can think of.
Wow.
And after about, I think it's like 2 months to 3 months, my body would just stop reacting to the antipsychotic that I was given.
Yeah.
And the doctors would start freaking out because they're like, oh shit, we need to figure out what to do. Quick, now, let's go. Through all of that, my mom was looking for alternative options. In the US, if you haven't been stable, no psychoses, no depressive episodes for a year, they won't let you do these like in treatment alternative things because you're too much of a liability. I didn't even have like, oh yeah, I've been not psychotic for 3 months like that. I didn't even have that. So she was having that issue with that in the US. She started looking into orthomolecular psychiatry. They're more about taking that mind-body approach instead of just that. And the one thing the doctor told me, which I thought was interesting, was, and this is something that nobody thinks about, but it's so obvious. This is the only freaking specialty that they don't test to. If you have a heart problem, before they give you medication, you're going to get blood tests done.
Yeah.
Before you get an antipsychotic, antidepressive, anytime anything from a psychiatrist, no one's giving you a test. No one's seeing if it's going to interact with something else. They're just like, oh, you hit these check marks. Here you go, and go do talk therapy and go on your way.
Yeah.
And the reality is, first of all, how can you do that? Yeah. And second of all, the antipsychotic that I was on, particularly, they stopped producing the pill version. You're probably going to pick up which one it is. I don't like to call them out just because it's not, I really don't care. Yeah. But they were doing an extended shot release version of it. Mm-hmm. So now my doctor was like, hey, told my mom, 3% of the patients that the pill works for, the shot doesn't. Like, that's not going to be a problem. Don't worry about it. We're good. I fall under that 3%. So I had a 30-day dosage and they couldn't do anything. And she starts getting like looking in everywhere, finds a psychiatrist in Colombia who's taking on this approach. And I remember when I went to see her, I started seeing her on Zoom. So that's why I think it's so funny. I'm like, I was doing this so like online therapy way before it was like in. Hilarious.
We're like the OG.
Literally, I'm like, man, you gotta get on that. It's so much better. And what you're saying is so true.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like the fact that we weren't face-to-face offered a buffer where I felt like I could relax, because when I am face-to-face with someone, I tend to just be like, oh my God, no, I don't want to do it.
Me too.
So I still remember the first time I walked into her office. She was like, first of all, get the stick that you have in your ass out. And I was just like, who are you? Like, excuse me? Like, what psychiatrist says that? No, man, she's so, like, I called her out on something because she was saying something and I didn't like it. And she gives me the first, like, you want to call your mom? Go for it. But you forget, I'm your last option. So you can do whatever you want. It was the first time that no one was sugarcoating anything. No one was telling me what I wanted to hear. She gave zero shits. She was like, you think I'm scared that you're going to fire me? Go. I don't care. I had never experienced that. So it really made me kind of just get like, oh, okay, my typical tantrums, my typical way of manipulating situations and people, it's not going to fly here. I had a really bad habit that anytime that my therapist or psychiatrist would say something and I didn't like it, I would shut off and I would slam the door and leave the room. And it would take a while for me to be able to kind of put myself in a safe enough space where I can allow them to do their work. So if we continue to have this pattern, I'm never getting actual help because I'm still calling the little girl in me, still calling the shot. She's still like, nope, throwing a tantrum, don't want to do this. And this doctor took me out of that. And I remember it was so uncomfortable, but she finally told me, she was like, nobody owes you anything. You think the world owes you something and nobody does. And you also feel like you have this bad karma because you're bipolar. And that's the outside's opinion. Because if we really look into it, is it really all that bad? And when she started to ask me that, I was like, no, actually, my creativity is like on. I feel way more than other people. And I really started to develop that kind of insight of how I can learn from something that was so negative. But it was also being met with, why are we still using medication to treat something when, again, what you said about antidepressants, there was a role in my life when I was in high school. Antidepressants played their role. I'm not going to say that medication doesn't have a place. But the medication, I have liver issues from being on medication for it.
It can't be the first line of defense. It can't be like the only option.
No, there needs to be other avenues. And she brought up cannabis and psilocybin and all of these things. And because of my own addictive behaviors and my own self-medicative past, I was like, no, that's not an option. No, we can't do that. And I had to break down the systems that I had put up from society, because it was, you need pharmaceuticals. Like, I was happy to go with what she was saying, but when she asked me to stop taking my sleeping pills, I didn't want to do that. I'm like, no. Why? And I'm like, because if I stop sleeping, I go crazy. So no, you can take everything else away, but I can't. And I had to come to terms with, I'm scared of going to sleep. Why am I scared to go to sleep? What is that? And really diving into all of that. And I felt like those are not things that are typically addressed in psychotherapy and traditional psychiatry. And like, I've recently gotten into neuro feedback, which I think is just crazy. I'm like, why are you giving little kids Adderall? Stop. Like, but then it's going back to what you were saying, burnt out clinicians. If I give you neurofeedback and then you're good to go and you don't need, quote unquote, need me anymore, then I just lost a source of income. I also make an income from prescribing these medications because these pharmaceutical companies give me an income for that. And I feel like that's something that no one's talking about, that you want to do the best that you possibly can for your patients, but you're also given this information, not all of it. And unless you're going into, literally, you were looking at for your own healing.
My own self. Like, you don't question it.
You don't question it. If it's for someone else, you're going to be a little bit more like, I don't know. But when you're literally desperate to get the answers for yourself, you look in all
everything.
Avenues. Literally, you're like, I don't care. I'm gonna do this.
That's it. It's like, it's literally, you reach a point where it's so bad that you're like, I'm willing to do anything. Like, I'm willing to try anything. And I totally agree. And it's interesting. Like, I think we're shifting because the younger clinicians like me are 100% on board with what I'm saying. Everybody I've talked to who are colleagues around, my age are like, thank you for doing this. Thank you for talking about this. Thank you for, like, we need to change this, because both clinicians and clients need to be well taken care of. And one cannot happen without the other. It's a symbiotic relationship, and, mutually beneficial. The therapist has to be able to hold space for the client. The client, has to be able to get vulnerable in that space so that the therapist can transmute that into healing. But, like, if the therapist if their cup is overflowing and they're just totally burnt out, there's no space that's going to be held for that client. There's going to be a medication thrown at the client, and there's going to be a simple quick fix and a couple of worksheets, and then the client's not going to get the results they need, even though the therapist very well knows that that's not what they need, but that's all they have the capacity to give. And it just has to be different, because we could be doing so much better.
Oh my God, so much better. It's so funny that you just said that, because that's like literally word for word. I laugh when people are like, oh, how was your healing journey when you were on traditional psychiatry? I'm like, I went to therapy twice a week. I went to see my psychiatrist twice a week, and I filled out a mood chart every day. Really? I'm like, yeah, I hated the fucking mood chart. Sucked. Because it asked me, are you angry, sad, mad, happy? And I'm like,
those are like, by the way, guys, there are like hundreds of different kinds of feelings and language for, like, not even hundreds, like thousands of
literally That was like one thing that I didn't know. Like my biggest, I laugh because anxiety was my emotion. You would ask me, how are you? I'm like, I'm anxious. My doctor, the psychiatrist that I was saying, she laughed because I would say that all the time. And eventually one day, what does anxiety mean to you?
Mm.
I had no idea. I'm like, well, I literally read, I was like, I like had memorized the, like every definition of DSM. I was like, and she's like, I went to school for that. I don't need you to repeat what I've read. What does anxiety mean to you?
Yeah.
Took me a long time to figure it out. And when I finally did, I was like, it's fear. For me, it's dead on fear, not wanting to. So it keeps me safe. And I started to kind of pick up on that of like, when people just say, I'm anxious, what does that mean? 95% of the time, nobody knows what it means. And it breaks my heart because it goes back to, again, you're burnt out and you're just like, here, take this label because it's going to make sense to you. And then you're not going to be confused about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
But you're not really saying anything other than, let me slap a Band-Aid on the issue.
Exactly. And it's just, and the DSM guys, it's like, it's all it is like criteria clusters. It's just, we've done studies, we've noticed that there happen to be a certain set of, habits, behaviors, symptoms that when looking at a large scale of all this research points to some type of something happening that we can now give a name to and we can give a framework to. And guys, that's it. That's all it is. It's just a way to understand the cluster of symptoms that maybe you're experiencing. It doesn't mean anything other than that. Like, you don't need to run and get medication. It doesn't mean your life is over. It doesn't mean that you're a crazy person. It doesn't mean, and many spiritualists, by the way, treat the phenomenon, I like to call it, the psychological phenomenon of hallucinations and auditory visual hallucinations as your ability to maybe see other dimensions and see other spiritual realms and communicate with other beings that not those of us who are not neurodivergent can't. So we don't know what hallucinations are. We don't know what those are. Like, even as a researcher myself, we like to say, we're like, oh, it's a brain function. Nobody fucking knows. It could be you seeing a window into a parallel universe. I don't know. So, I think we need to just take a big giant step back and just admit that we don't know everything, that there are certain things that we do know that we can definitely give a voice to, but that we also have to leave room for, like, let's expand, let's look at all the different angles on this. Let's talk to many different people with different backgrounds, beliefs, from different cultures who look at things from different perspectives, like the symptoms, quote unquote, of some mental illnesses, quote unquote, might be considered shamanic by other cultures. So I want you guys to with a very big grain of salt, look at the DSM and look at modern psychology, because even Freud did not talk about the mind. And actually, when they translated his work, and I love talking about this because I just learned this year from my doctoral program, when they translated his main works, Western scientists needed it to fit in this mold of, it's not about soul, it's about science. So they actually changed the word in Austrian that he had written for soul into mind. And that has shifted the entire field of psychology, which actually is all about soul work.
Oh my God.
So it's not a medicine. It's not supposed to be included in medicines. Like, it's not a medicine field like that. Like, it's a soul, philosophical, spiritual field. Psychology is like at the root. And we have just, Western society's taken shit and run with it. And now we think it's like a whole medical thing. It's not, guys. It's like soul exploration. And that's really what this is, and understanding your energetics and the way that you operate as an individual because of the way that you've been raised and the experiences you've had and the genetics you have. And there's no two people that are similar. And that's why I also think this book is crazy, because you can't standardize the human soul. You can't. So, and that's what I have to say on that.
So kind of, I'm going to jump into your childhood. It's funny that you were saying this. When I was 15, I saw A Beautiful Mind, and my teacher in high school totally laughed at me because I looked at her. I'm like, there's no way this guy's crazy. And she's like, did you understand the movie? And I'm like, yes, I understood the movie. Did you understand the movie? and she's a psychologist teacher in high school and trying to like understand why I am defending this quote unquote crazy person. And I go to her, I'm like, I think that you just haven't done your job right and you don't know enough about the mind in order to make an educated decision. So it's been something that I've been thinking about for a while. How were you like, I know that you experienced a lot of trauma in your childhood, but prior to that trauma, what was your personality like? And I'm asking because I feel like a lot of the time when you've experienced trauma, it's almost like you forget who you were prior to. Wait, you're muted.
Sorry about that. 100%.
You're good.
No, so basically, it's really interesting that you asked that question because now more than ever, I feel like I have actually gotten back to who I was before the trauma, and I'm not ever going to be the same. But the core, I feel like I'm like in and out my authentic self again. And that I've integrated it in a way that like, you know, I've cried so much about this because I never thought I'd feel like this again. But as a kid growing up, before kind of a lot of this stuff happened, I was exactly the way I am now, like free spirited, just like happy all the time, like always seeing the positive in things, always like, I don't know why I've been hurt so many times by people. To this day, I still believe so fucking deeply in my heart that every single human being is good and that things happen to people that change the way that they feel about themselves in the world, and then they act in ways that are not in alignment with their soul, because we are born blank slates and we all are born in love and with love, and that is all we know how to feel. And then, you know, I think maybe there's some people out there who are like sociopaths, and that's a different story, that's like an outlier. But 99% of the population, we're all good people. We're all good people. But, you know, good people get misled, go down bad paths and do bad things. So I guess, anyway, going back to your question, I think, you know, I felt like the trauma really made me hide and go really deep within myself. And I really lost myself, but I was never really lost. I was just really buried.
Okay.
And really buried and covered under a lot of rubble. And then what I had to do is pick apart the pieces and then build a new house with this new soul. So it's still the same soul, but it's a new house. And it's like, you can move forward kind of with that integration, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. I love the way you speak, and you just like, I literally want to just be like, can you just teach courses? Can you just like break down all this information you're learning? Because you're making it so much more exciting than if I was reading a journal of science. I side note, I wanted to go and be a psychiatrist. That's why I went to school, because I wanted to debunk the fact that mental illnesses didn't exist.
Yeah,
And
no, me too.
that was like it. But then the universe was like, nah, let's just give you one so you can deal with it that way. And I'm like,
Nothing
all
better
right,
than
cool.
life experience.
Right? It's like, here, you don't need to go to school for this shit. Just do it. And I learn all the time. She's not my therapist anymore, but we still stay in contact. And she laughs because she's like, you're the only person that I generally think would thrive in like a research lab. Like you just be happiest person. Cause anytime that I was like seeing her, I'm like, do you think you could get me an EEG machine? Why? I measure my brain waves to understand what happens when I'm psychotic. And she's just like, how? I'm like, well, I read an article that said that brainwaves explain stuff. So like, let's just figure it out. Like that's always been me. So deep down, I'm just always like, why? Like explain the why. And you came down so much today that I'm like, can I learn from you? Can I just call you and be like, what did you learn in school today? Tell me about it. So if you ever want to do that.
Anytime, I will literally like just text you anytime I like learn something new or mind blowing, because I feel like it's like all the time. And I'm just like, I can't believe we just need to like, everybody needs to know all this stuff, because then we can be seriously like the architects of our reality. The truth is nothing exists. Nothing is real and everything is real, you know? And that's kind of just how it is. And it's crazy. And it feels like you're in a different planet when you start to realize you have really like so much more control over your lived reality, no matter where you are ever than you think. You know, it's interesting.
I love that you just said that. I was I'm very open about this. I love plant medicine. I'm all about plant medicine. So
Yes.
I love that you told me about the panic, because I was like, that's so interesting. I didn't know that, which now sent me down a rabbit hole that I'm going to be going down later today. But hey, I was with my friend a couple weeks ago, and if I'm consuming cannabis and I'm bringing other people into it, it's because I want to have like this soul spiritual connection. It's not to watch
Yeah.
TV and like whatever.
Yeah.
So we're talking, and all of a sudden I'm like, don't you ever just think that we're everything and nothing at once? And she looks at me and she's just like, why can't you just say this shit to people all the time? And I'm like, nah, man, there's a filter all the time. This is only like, but it's what you just said. It's so true. Once we can kind of grasp that, I feel like it changes everything.
It does.
It really does. So I have I have two questions that I want to go into. The sexual assault is something that I want to talk about, just because I feel like it's what you were saying. As women, we are told to, you need to be less. You need to make yourself small. You're not allowed to do this. Like, you're asking for too much. And I remember, I want to say like 2 years ago, I was watching an influencer online who I still follow, but at the time I was very triggered by what she said. And she was talking about not wanting to have sex once. And she's like, I just kind of just did it just to kind of get it over with, because it was better than fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I still hadn't dealt with my own thing, I'm like, how can you give people this message? Like, what? Totally projecting. But what I realized was, when I lost my virginity, I didn't want to. I did it because I didn't want to be a tease. I didn't want to be the girl that, like, you know what I mean? It was just,
Yeah. Who is like, oh, you're so into like this or that. Like, why wouldn't you want to do this too? Like,
exactly.
you know, like, oh, all of a sudden, just because I like to like get eaten out means I want you to fuck me.
Right? It's like, thank you. So like, I was like the kid. I'm sure that my parents' divorce like influenced this, but like, I was the one that I'm like, love doesn't exist right now. We're in high school. You can't love anyone. Like, you're in lust. Just be honest. So I was very much like, just accept that you're in lust. Stop with the BS that you're in love. But with that, I wanted it to come from an empowered place. It was coming from a wounded, I didn't want to be cheated on, like my mom was cheated on, and like everything I saw culturally, being Hispanic, I feel like it's something we see so much. And what you're taught is, shut up. You don't say anything. You got to keep it up. You got to raise your kids. And
it's your fault. And that it's your fault that this person is stepping out. It's your fault that you're not satisfying your partner, your husband. You're not good enough. You're not doing enough. And that's such bullshit.
But like, the way that I internalized it was, oh my God, you're weak. I don't want to be that. So I'm going to take power, and I'm not going to let myself do that. Totally that. And I didn't want to have sex. So my question is, how were you able to move on from that? Because I was 3 years ago. I'm not going to say it was rape, because it wasn't. It was me. No, it wasn't 3 years ago. I'm sorry. It was 4 years ago. I was going through my Saturn return and going back to still not, I was reliving that loop of 18 and 7. And essentially, again, instead of going to Florida for my dad, I was moving to New Mexico for my aunt. And when she didn't appear, and I'm not trying to blame her, just kind of give context, I was alone. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anyone. And there was this one girl that was showing me a lot of attention. And I knew deep down that it wasn't the attention that I wanted. And I knew that there was something not okay with this. And
like, you felt it in your body.
Yeah, I felt it. Like, everything in me was like, no. But I was so desperate for attention and just to feel like someone wanted to be around me, that I didn't care. And she ended up drugging me and took advantage of me.
I'm so sorry.
I still haven't had sex. And in the past, it was just like, okay, I'm more in a place where I don't want to just have sex to have sex. Like, I want to be in a committed relationship. But every time I talk to anybody about this, oh, it's going to be hard. Like, it's such this. And I'm like, I don't want you to make me feel more like a victim. I want you to make me feel empowered from that. And I could totally be wrong, but the way that you view things and kind of your approach is very much like drop the victim. I know it sucks, like to use that to kind of grow from it almost. So I kind of want to know how did you deal with it? How did you process it? Because it's something that what you just said, I don't think until the Me Too movement we were so aware of how a lot of the experiences that we have weren't they weren't consensual. They were more of just like, I don't know what else to do.
Kind of like a don't want to upset, don't want to rock the boat, kind of just like it's not really going to hurt that or anything. So it's just like,
It's like, why not?
But that idea that that's okay, that's like that's like an actual perspective that we've been given. I'll say first of all, it's not necessarily about dropping the victim mentality, but I'm all about solutions.
Okay.
And I think when I approach this kind of a thing, there's no one way to do it. There's no clean way to do it. It's messy. And rather than say hard, I like to say it's fucking messy. It's messy. And you have to be so in tune with yourself. You need a support system, either, someone who can walk you through a journey, either a coach or a therapist. That's really fucking good. Or a support system of like having friends and family that know what's going on and know what you're going through and that you're going to start working on some of the stuff. I actually did not work on this because I chose to. And I think this is a very important distinction to make.
Okay.
I got to such a place of depression that my choices were kill myself or figure it out. And my cousin unfortunately took her own life when she was 28. And around that same time, I was having the same thoughts. And I said to myself, Liz would never want you to do that. Don't do this. Don't go there. And so the only option I had at that point, I had ran away as far as I could to try and put it off. And then it was like it was a do or die. So I decided to do. And that's really the only reason why I just was forced at it. I just was pushed to the point where I could no longer ignore it. And I think there is a point where that happens. I think either you realize, you want to have a deeper relationship with a romantic partner, let's say, and you're not in a place where you can do that, but you want it so bad and you're ready to do what you need to do because you've reached that point. So I never want anybody to open up this box for yourself if you're not in a space where you really feel like you're called to do that. If you're the kind of person that for all intents and purposes, you've gone through life and things have happened and you're very resilient and you do not have problems because, longer problems from these experiences, or you have really strong communities and families and strong attachments and things that happen early on that allow you to be more resilient. There are many people who can it happened. We go to therapy for a little bit. It's good. All right, I'm okay. But for a lot of us who didn't have that, it really stays with us too. So, depending on your level of resiliency and how it's affecting you, if it's not right now, really affecting you in your life, there's no reason to open up that box and go down that hole. You go there when you feel ready and called, very much like plant medicine. Yeah. When I haven't done ayahuasca, I'm waiting for, Mama Ayahuasca to send me a sign. I'm sure she will at some point, but I haven't received it. But I did for mushrooms, and I hadn't done them ever. And I did them this year for the first time. And that was beautiful. But it was because I knew all this time I'd been approached to do it for years. And I knew I wasn't in a headspace where I knew it was going to open up something that I wasn't ready for. And then when I did it this time, I knew in my soul, in my heart, you feel in your body, I'm ready to experience this. And when you start to feel like that, it may not be totally ready, but you're ready to look at it, you'll know. And then at that point, what I really did was I, dove into getting as much support as I could for myself.
I mean, it's all part of the fun. Dogs barking, all good.
I don't know. I think there's someone at the door. But, I think the first step that I took was just first acknowledging the reality for myself. That was really hard. And just saying, you know what, those encounters that I had actually weren't okay. And they didn't really, it wasn't anything that I was okay with.
Aww.
Sorry about that. He was like the little repair guy at the door. He's always so so I think the first thing was just recognizing that those were things that I really like wasn't okay with. Those interactions were not consensual, and grieving. And there was a tremendous amount of grieving that had to happen for me to actually like even start healing. Like first, just simply acknowledging and sitting with that reality and not attaching any stories or meaning is super important, or judgment. It's like, okay, so this happened. I did the best that I could with the knowledge and the tools that I had at the time that this happened. I made the best decision I could, knowing what I knew. And now I know better. And it's okay. And nothing is wrong with me. I'm not dirty. I'm not broken. No one has taken anything from me, because at the end of the day, I give myself everything that I need, and nothing ever fundamentally changes my inherent goodness, my inherent abilities, my worthiness, all of that. It's always there. It never goes away. And so it's acknowledging for yourself that you're still in your core a good, healthy, amazing human, and you've gone through some shit. And that now what do we have to do to integrate that shit into your humanness and your soul having a human experience so that you can transmute the pain into purpose. And for me, helping and being of service has been the most healing part of this. And not just transferring the information to helping myself heal, but also being able to like have conversations like these with women like you and be like, yeah, you know, like there are more of us than you know. And like the faster we start, you know, acknowledging these things for ourselves, we can only compartmentalize for so long. This stuff is going to come out in other areas of our life. So, you know, if you want to be with a partner and be sexual, and also the problem is that like you're very disconnected from your body, which, you know, for me happened I still struggle with my sexual stuff now. But what I've done is I work with coaches, and there are amazing intimacy and sex coaches, and who are trauma informed. I know if you want any, hit me up. Super safe individuals who will actually teach you how to somatically re-engage with your body in pleasure in a way that's safe. And that you need support with that. That's like, you know, you have to work with someone who knows how to work with a traumatized body so that it feels safe, it feels aligned, nothing feels like you're pushing, and you're able to slightly push outside the comfort zone and grow back into having access to that part of yourself. Because so much of our Shakti power, our divine feminine energy comes from our root chakra. It comes from our sexual energy. And we need to be able to access that if we really want to step into the fullness of our experience.
First of all, thank you for just saying that you need to be in a space to be ready for that, because I feel like sometimes we just want to like work on things now. And that analogy that you use with plant medicine, it's the same one. Like, it really is when you feel called to it, not just because someone's telling you to work through it. So I feel like that's something I needed to even hear. I push myself all the time. I'm like, you just need to work on this now. But yeah, no, I think that's such a powerful message for everyone, especially women. We try to do it all.
Like literally all the things.
It's like all the things now. So thank you for that. I'm definitely going to hit you up for some of these intimacy and sex coaches, and I'll kind of link them if anyone else.
Please. They've all also gone through the trauma informed training.
Oh, really? Oh, great.
That I really hold very dear to my heart, who I know very well and I trust. So absolutely, I have like 2 names right away that I can give you. Yeah.
Perfect. I'll hit you up about that. And then also if there's anyone, because I know that you're not working with any mental health kind of clients right now, but I really like the approach that you have. It resonates so much with me. But then again, I tell people, I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I am not going to pretend to be a therapist. I can just be your ally because I've been there.
Hey, and those are really good too.
They are. But I like, for me, it's more of like, I want to like give people the connections, because I feel like unless you know someone that knows someone, then you know about it. It's hard. You're always just like picking and choosing and kind of seeing, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And then on top of that, it's like, yeah, there is a financial aspect to it that not everyone has. So it's always
Yeah.
great when we can know that, all right, the person I'm working with, they've worked with so-and-so, I like their energy and that type of thing.
Absolutely. And I'm actually putting together a referral network with all of the practitioners who come through my program they approach their work from this angle. They're all trauma informed. They're all holistic approaches, whether they approach it primarily from a Reiki energy perspective or a yogic perspective or a, scientific neurobiological perspective or a therapy perspective. They're all really looking at all of it, and it's powerful. So I'm really excited. That's going to be on the new website probably in the next month or so. So y'all can come to the new website and there'll be an OM referral network. You'll see all of our practitioners. They're all OM approved. I'm very fucking specific and very picky about these people. So just know that whoever you're going to get on that list is money. They're great. And they all offer different kinds of payment plans and scholarship opportunities. And so really just talk with them about what's going on and they'll try their best to work with you.
Oh, awesome. Yay. Man, you were like, I literally want to like, just see a year from now, I'm going to like call him and be like, what the, you're like running the world all of a sudden. Like, no, it's just,
God, I hope, but
well,
also.
no, it's like 2017, you started your Instagram account. Look at where you're at right now. Like, no, first of all, in less than a year, how much you grew. And, but it's more of, I see the Sag. Okay, so people know because we talked about this beforehand. So as you all know, I love to astrologically profile everyone because I'm such an astrology freak. It turns out that Gabriella has the opposite signs of me. So she's a Capricorn rising, which I'm going to say I can pick up a little bit of, but I feel like you're not trying to like kind of like you let down your guard. So I am full on just like Gemini right now. I'm like, ooh, Gemini energy. Yes.
I live there. I like it. I'm like to a fault, like honest and myself.
But what I was going to say is I see the Sag, like I see how much the Sagittarius, like kind of mindset of growth in your business, because most people, and I'm putting myself, I'm like, oh no, we gotta wait. We gotta wait more. You're like, nah, I'm just gonna do it. I can totally.
Always been like that. It's so bad. I'm just like, I'm jumping in, and it's like whether there's water or not, I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there.
But that's a sad energy. Just like, I got this. I'll figure it out, and it's so great. I love it, man.
I'm glad you appreciate
incredible.
that.
It's so incredible. What are you most proud of, and what sets you apart from most? Which I feel like we've covered this like throughout, but
that's what I think sets me apart. I don't know if there's one thing I'm the most proud of. I think if I was to boil it down, I think ultimately it's the community that I've built, and that I actually have created a space that I really could have used when I was on my healing journey. And knowing that like everyone who comes into the space like is being held and supported as much as they want to be. The people who work for me, we have such a strong community. Each one of the women who works for me has a 6-figure business of their own that I help them with. They don't just work for me. They have their own missions, their own visions, their own thing that they want to do out there. And so my community is not just a community of self-healers and empaths and spirit guides and like magical fucking alien unicorn wonderful humans, but it's also comprised of leaders and of women who really want to change the world. And that is something I'm really proud of, because we need women in leadership positions. We need leadership. We need positions. We need women in politics. We need like women in business. We need women in tech. We need women in STEM, science, education, whatever your calling is as a leader, I'm here for you. And all the work that I do, whether it's, even though I call it mental health coaching, I do all that work with my leadership clients, with my business clients. And so if you're looking for that kind of inner experience, I can work with you one-to-one, and it'll be leadership coaching, but it incorporates all of the things that we've been talking about today and the healing and all of that. So it's like slightly shifted a little bit, but still very much the same.
that's so awesome. No, but I feel like it's shifting based on where you're at. Like, it's like, I feel like it's literally a reflection of where you're at, which kind of going back to that authentic piece that it's so strong in you. I'm like, okay, you are my expander right now. You're showing me where I want to be. So this is like so great. No, it's so amazing. And then how are things with your dad? I'm just curious, just because There's so much parallel there. You don't have to
Absolutely.
like give in too much. I'm just like curious.
I'm
Is
literally an
he,
open book, and he's very supportive of me sharing about our journey. And I'm very, 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 very fucking lucky, you know, that like he is so open and allows me to talk about it. Because he could say, I really don't want you to talk about me or whatever. And he knows I do this public stuff. And so I love him so much. And in all reality, it wasn't good for a very long time. Actually, right after college, I was so angry at him because I didn't understand really what he was going through. All I knew was that he basically gave up. Like when after I was about 7 years old, and my mom had to take care of us and work 2 jobs, and she's an immigrant, and you know she ended up, but she, you know, is a doctor, psychologist, but she had to work in school. She taught herself English. She's fucking incredible. I mean, that's a whole other episode of something, but I don't want to talk too much about her, but like my relationship with my dad, like it wasn't good. Like in high school and everything, I just hated him so much because he just wasn't ever there. He was always angry. He was yelling at me. He's very emotionally abusive because he was in so much pain. Not excusing, he could have helped himself, but he didn't. And I was angry about that too, that he didn't want to be on medication. And I thought that was the answer. And he didn't want to go get help, and he didn't want to fix himself. He just wanted to be angry at the world. And he also, you know, has some narcissistic qualities because of, again, the specific stuff he had going on growing up. Now I understand. I'm like, oh, like, fuck, I get it. And I'm also really glad you're alive and you're, you know, here. But at the time I was really angry. And so after college, something, you know, thing went down on graduation day where he made a spectacle of himself and had a meltdown very publicly, very embarrassingly, in front of my boyfriend, his family at the time, like a rage meltdown. And, you know, then left. He never took pictures with me. I was so upset. It was supposed to be like my day. I'd worked so hard for this. And all I wanted was like a picture with my dad in my graduation cap and gown. And he couldn't even show up for that. And so he left me there. I was like so sad. It was like standing outside on the stairs waiting for him, watching all the parents come out of the auditorium, like, and he just left. And that broke my heart. And then he tried to basically say that I didn't understand and that it was my mother's fault. And I was like, how can you not, I'm on the phone with you right now. How can you basically blame it on other people and not just at least say, I'm sorry, I had to leave. Like, I don't have the capacity. Like, how can you not just say that? And I was so angry. So for about 7 years, I didn't talk to him and we had no communication. And it broke my heart, but I had to go through a grieving process to grieve the father that I thought I was going to have, that I thought I could have. Because for many years growing up, in the beginning, he didn't have mental illness. Or not in mental illness, but he wasn't suffering like that. Like the first 6 years of my life, he was so present. That's where I get my energy from. That's where I get my creativity from. That's where he taught me piano. He was my piano teacher. We were so connected. And then when he lost his job because of his mental illness struggles, when I was around 7, he never got a job after that. And he just went downhill. So, you know, I had about 7 years where I didn't talk to him because he couldn't say, I'm sorry. He couldn't take responsibility for anything, because at the same time, I understand and I have compassion, but at the same time, you have to take some self-responsibility over, like, you do have some control over getting help and figuring out yourself so you don't bleed on other people.
Yeah.
So after about 7 years, I finally, he reached out because he was like, look, I have to get quadruple bypass surgery. He had moved to Puerto Rico. He didn't tell me he had moved to Puerto Rico. He's living on an island. He lives off disability. He spent all of his money. He like is stuck there. Then the hurricane happened. Then he had heart failure and he didn't have anybody there. And I still didn't feel safe being around him physically, but he opened up communication. And I said, look, this was like the hardest conversation I had ever had. And I was like, I love you, but you are dangerous for my health. And I need you to do a few things for me to feel safe being in a relationship with you. And I'd done a lot of therapy at this time, so I knew kind of what I wanted to say. I'd been thinking about this for such a long time. And I said, the only conditions that I'm laying out for this are the following. If you want to have a relationship with me, you need to respect my boundaries. You need to understand it's not personal, but that energetically, sometimes you're a lot, and that I love you, but that I can't carry your anger and I can't carry your emotional swings. Like I can't be your therapist, and you can't lean on me like that. I need you to be my dad. I need to lean on you. And the other thing is, I need you to take responsibility for what went on as a kid for me. Like, I need you to see and understand that the way that you behaved, even though I understand it's mental illness or there's mental differences, there's things happening, life, trauma, you still need to acknowledge for my healing that you have participated in my trauma. And I'm not saying you're a bad person, and I'm not saying it's your fault, and I'm not saying feel bad about it, but for me to heal and for me to feel like I can actually have an authentic relationship with you where I'm not just, hey, how's it going? Oh, blah, 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 like superficial. If you want to have a real relationship with me, then this is what it has to be. And he was so resistant. So 7 years I didn't talk to him. He's still resistant, right? That pride that he had or whatever was happening coming up for him. And I think it was almost the devastation of like, he couldn't admit that he had done something because it would make him feel so devastated to acknowledge that, but he has to, sorry. Like, we all go through pain, but it's like self-responsibility. And that's a condition, again, if you wanted to have that relationship with me. He doesn't have to, and we can go our separate ways. I already grieved that dad that I lost as a kid. So now we talked and he was able to take some responsibility. I understand there's a limit to what I can ask from him because this is where he's at. And if I want to have an authentic relationship with him, I have to accept that this is what he has going on. This is his extra stuff. And so it's a very mindful relationship for me. And it's very boundaried so that I can feel safe. So I control when we have conversations. He'll text me every single morning. I don't text right back, but I will text that day and say, hey, hope you're doing well. Love you. He'll send me photos of his walks. We'll have like that texting communication feels good. We'll talk every couple of weeks for like an hour, but he's the kind of person that, once he gets you on the phone, it's like energy sucking. And so I know that he needs some of that support. I know that I can only give so much. So I boundary it and I say, I have an hour. I have about 45 minutes to an hour on Saturday. Do you want to talk then? And we talk, and I give him as much as I possibly can. He gives me as much as he possibly can. And then we take a break. And that's the kind of thing is that it's like, if you want to work with people who are neurodivergent, people who are coming from trauma, it's like, if you love people, like love anybody like that, it's just really understanding how to create a relationship that functions that includes and integrates that diversity, so that you can actually have a real relationship, meeting the person where they are and not trying to change and make them somebody that they can't be, and make it okay for you too. So it's limited. It's not the ideal relationship I'd love to have with a father. It's not, I don't know that I'm going to invite him to my wedding. I don't trust necessarily he's at a place where he can control that yet, or that he wants to. But we talk on the phone and we have the communication and relationship that we can right now. And so I'm really grateful that we're talking. I'm really grateful that, I have so much love for him. He loves me, that I've gotten to a place where I'm no longer angry or bitter or resentful, but very understanding. And I think that's where we are now. And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm open to just seeing the evolution of things, but it's been really healing to be able to shift into this, like, okay, I'm going to stop fantasizing and trying to fit this person into a box, and I'm going to just see them and meet them where they are. And that's been an amazing way to just have a healthy relationship with someone, I think, who's dealing with this, at least for him.
No, I thank you so much, seriously, for sharing that. Thank you to him for allowing you to share that. I think I love that you're so honest and transparent about where you are with him and the type of relationship that you guys do have, because there is this kind of guilt sometimes of, no, well, this is what the relationship dynamic is supposed to be like. And if it's not like that, then I'm doing something wrong. Or, you're trying to kind of back to forcing people to fit into kind of this box that maybe they're not meant to live in. And I really do see what you're saying of, this is what I can give you. That was something I had to do with my mom. Like, I love her. We are totally enmeshed and codependent though. So a few years ago, I kind of had to say, hey, I can't talk to you first thing in the morning because you dump on me everything that's been happening. And then I start my day with, oh, okay, do I need to fix this? Like, because that's been the
You're
way.
already in fight or flight. You're already
Yeah.
in like an anxious state because it's like there's immediately something you have to deal with.
Exactly. And my tendency is very much to be the caregiver, because when I was little, and it's so funny because my mom now sees, like when we talk about it, she's like, oh my God, I see your little self in a completely different way now. And it was when my parents were getting separated. My dad cheated on my mom. I knew that he had done something bad, but I didn't know what he had done. So I'm like,
Yeah.
Mom, he'll behave again. I will get him to behave. He'll be a good boy. Because I'm 6, and I'm like, yeah, he'll be a good boy. My mom's like, no, sweetie, you can't make him behave. Like, it doesn't work that way. And to me, it was like, no. Yeah, he'll behave. Like, Happy, right? You'll behave. You'll be a good boy now. And he's just like, yeah, I'll be a good boy. And it's so interesting how, as a kid, you kind of put this kind of view on things, and how things are supposed to be. But no, I love that. I love that you're okay with that. And I love what you said about not knowing if he's going to be in your wedding, because again, there's that kind of, and you have that Hispanic where I feel like it's even more like,
Yeah.
I see it with, I grew up in South Florida, and I grew up with a lot of friends that were white, American, very traditional. And then I grew up with Puerto Rican, Cuban, Colombian, Venezuelan, because it's South Florida.
Yeah.
And I remember like feeling like always weird and awkward when I'm around my friends that are ultra white, because they had the Lunchables and like all these things. And I'm like, my mom doesn't buy that stuff. She makes me bring smelly food to school.
Oh, the smelly lunchbox.
Yes, because she would make like homemade food all the time. We're like, I have this very, very prominent memory. My mom wouldn't buy chips.
Yeah.
She would make chips.
Oh my God, that's
Which
so
is
awesome.
like, now as an adult, it's like totally badass. Like, yeah, my mom made chips. But when you're
a kid, you're like, why can't I just be like everybody else?
Yes, I'm like, why can't you be like everyone else and just buy chips? And she's like, no. Or cereal. I'm like, Mom, everyone has cereal for breakfast. Why do you insist on making me eggs and toast? And she's like, this is a meal. That is not. I'm like, no, it's not. But it's funny because I would see it that, oh man, I saw it at my friend's house. So my friend's mom was calling her. And she's like, what? And I'm like, you can yell what when your mom calls you? She's like, yeah. What do you mean? And I'm like, if I yell what, my mom slaps me. Like, I gotta walk down to where she is and say, yes, mommy. I can't yell what? Yeah. I can't even yell. I can't, like, you have to go to her. And it was this like disconnect, because they didn't understand where I was coming from, and I didn't understand where they were coming from. So I tried to do that on my mom the next day, and she kept like, she still talks about this. She kept calling me. She's like, Andrea. And I'm like, yeah, mommy, Andrea, I can't hear you. And I'm like, how can she not hear me? I'm like yelling in front of her. She's like, Andrea, espérate, come here. Grabs me by the ear. She's like, what did you just say? You forgot. Your little friends. You don't yell. I'm not a dog. I don't come to you. I gave birth to you.
Yeah.
Come to me. And I was like, uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Like, so there is this underlying thing of you're supposed to show up a certain way, or you're supposed to have family at your wedding. So thank you for sharing that, because it also invites people to kind of look at their own dynamic and witness, do I want to allow this in, or is this totally different? So before we leave, I want to know about your fiance now. Because like you were with him when you were still doing a lot of like healing.
I don't know why he stayed with me. I tell him that all the time.
So what's his sign? I'm just curious.
He's a Leo.
Ooh, so today's his day. Yay for him.
His day, yeah. The Leo full moon.
Oh my gosh. So he's a Leo.
Yeah.
I could totally see that though. Your Sag sun and his Leo. Yeah, I could totally see that though.
Yeah, but I think also like much of my trauma and the way that it manifested itself was actually playing into his trauma as a child. And very much like we were attracted to one another because we filled unconscious roles for each other. When I first met him, he was very not as connected to his emotions. He was more closed off. He was hard to read. He wanted a lot of alone time. There wasn't wasn't like a lot of that, like, I'm very cuddly and kissy and, you know, like, I want you all over me. You know, and he's like, oh my God, I need like space.
That
Like,
was me. Anytime someone would try to hold my hand, I'm like, I'm not a dog. You don't need to walk me. You can walk
right?
there. I can walk here. Now I'm like,
Oh,
touch me, hold me. I want to be with you.
I want to like be wrapped up.
Right? That's when you're able to be intimate. So wait, so
Exactly. So he was different. Yeah.
but
And
he
like,
wasn't emotionally available. It wasn't
right.
like
So for
he
me,
was.
that worked. That was like,
Okay.
you know, my dad was very emotional, but he was not emotionally available for me. And
Mm.
so that was like, I recognized, oh, there's the I'm like we're always attracted to these unconscious dynamics, right? So if you can just pick it out right away, you can like deal with it. And I'm like, okay. And so there were some elements. And then also like I reflected elements, if you think of his mom, that were unpredictable, a little chaotic, when I was in my healing, I would react quickly, you know, fiery as fuck, like very angry. And so I think in many ways that reflected a lot of the dynamics he grew up with. And so we actually went on our healing journey very much together, and it was like rough as fuck. Like I started to get better. And then because we were in this relationship, we're living together, I would get better. And then I noticed he needs to come meet me. And then there got to a point where he actually started doing his own work. And now we've risen together, and it's like such a conscious relationship. Like I could never wish for anything better. But the first 3 years were so rough, like so much fighting, so much miscommunication, so much not understanding each other, and needing things from each other without knowing how to communicate that or what those needs really were. And so like he really catapulted my healing journey and being my rock when I was a mess. And then I got to be better and be the rock while he got to be in his messy goop. And then he got better. And then now we're both like very solid, and we both really know who we are, and we have our practices, and we talk often about lots of different deep things, and we communicate about what's not working for us, and we never fight, like ever. We have discussions and we have heated moments where we're like frustrated, but it'll immediately go into, okay, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm gonna go for a walk, this is what works for me, I'll be back in 10 minutes, and then let's talk about a plan, let's talk about a solution, let's talk about what we can do better. And that is awesome. So he's awesome. He's just got his pilot's license. He's a pilot.
Oh,
And he's living
congratulations.
his dreams. So I'm really happy for him too.
That is so incredible. Oh, dude, that's amazing. So I just have like a question, because I know that it can be a little bit difficult when you're growing and the person might not be growing with you.
Yeah.
And typically, I'm saying typically, please listen with a very grain of salt with what I'm about to say. I feel like right now there's this movement of I need to fix my shit before I start a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I need to fix my shit before I can manifest the one, or all of these things.
Yeah.
And listening to what you were saying, it kind of gave me permission, because part of me has this like, I don't want to say block, but limiting belief of I do need to fix my shit, because if not, I'm going to do my mom and my dad all over again. And I don't want to do that. But listening now to you, it's like, wow, you were able to grow. He was able to hold space for you. He was able to grow. You were able to hold space for him. Like, that's so incredible. And most of the time when people are talking about this, someone's already been on like this spiritual path. You weren't on it. So like, it's so cool being able to like witness that, and not like, oh, like I already got my shit, so this is what you need to work on. It was more of like, oh shit, I have a lot of shit to look at myself. How did you guys navigate when you started to kind of up level and grow and started to look, oh man, he has a lot of stuff? Like, because I know it doesn't, when you tell someone you need to work on this, it's not like people are like, okay, thank you, you know,
bring up the defenses and
right.
Like, yeah, I think there was a couple of things. I think, you know, you can't deny when someone's getting better, they're happier. And you just watch it. You watch it happen. They're freer. They're happier. They're not taking things as personally. They're growing. Things are happening for them. The universe is giving them support, and they're moving forward, and it seems like things are working. Then that's kind of inspiring for other people to be like, I want what she's on. Because we were both depressed messes. Like, it's not like, you know what I mean? So, you know, so when I started to get better, and I would come home and say, and I would just like share, I'd say, you know what? I had a really great session today. I found one therapist my whole life who like, I really loved. And this was when I happened to find her right on this healing journey in the beginning. And I was like, did you know that like X, Y, and Z, or like the things I was learning in school, or this was when I was going through my healing journey, I was in school. So I would come home and be like, Devin, oh my God. So you know that time like your mom did this and like you told me that it was okay. It's not, and now you do this because she's been doing this. And he would be like, what? And he's, you know, and I'm like, no judgment. I love you, but it's blowing my mind because I see all the pieces. And he was like, oh my God. Okay. Actually, I can see that too. And like, we would talk and he was like, you know, wary, but like after a while of seeing me, I think get better and better, it just kind of, he was like, okay, I want to feel this way. I want to feel this way. So what do I do? And I was like, start with gratitude. So he started with a gratitude journal. He, swear to God, he does this every single day. To this day, he has like multiple journals filled with all the things he's grateful for. And it changed his whole mindset. Just that one, writing down 5 things you're grateful for every day started it. That was it. Once he started to see and feel how that felt,
yes.
dove into other things. And his mom is a meditator. So it's kind of been something that's like, you know, he's familiar with it, but now I know he really does practice, and he went to therapy. He went and got his own work done, you know, in a therapeutic context, and that really helped. And then, yeah. And I don't think it was ever me. I think there might've been a few points where we were arguing a lot and it wasn't even arguing. It would be like him picking a fight, unconsciously picking fights to try and bring me back down to homeostasis where we were when we met, so that he wouldn't, you know, unconsciously, we don't want to have to change. So it's like, in order for him not to change, he had to bring me back to where I was, and I refused to go. So he'd be like trying to pick fights, and I would be like, I love you. Because I see it happening. It's like the anxiety that like, feels that they're going to leave you. You know, when someone heals and gets better, they're suddenly not going to need you anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, I love you. I need you. You don't need to be mad at me. Let's talk about it. What's happening? And then he'll like tell me, I'm like, okay, so here's a solution. And then he'll be like, he doesn't know what to do with himself because he like wanted to start a fight, but that's like his old programming. So then when he started to see, oh, you can actually get the results that you want without having to fly into an anxious mess, that was healing. So then he, you know, all those little things, the way I also interacted with him, I shifted the way I interacted with him. And I started to interact with him the way that I believed he needed me to, knowing what I knew about his past and what I knew about psychology and trauma. And once I started to put that together, we were much able to talk to each other more and connect in a much deeper way that he understood, I understood, we understood each other. And that like really shifted things too. So, you know, a lot of different things, but you can never make anybody get on that elevator with you as you're going up. But what you can do is, you know, you can visit them, you can go down and visit them. It's not going to feel good. And eventually you won't want to do that anymore. And you can be like, hey, let's get on this elevator. Come on this elevator with me. Let's go. You know? And like, mostly if they see you skyrocketing, that's when they're going to be like, I'm getting on the elevator. You know? And that's how you do it. If you really want someone to get on a healing journey, go on your own and be transparent about it and tell them what you're learning. And then they're going to see as you're getting better and healthier and happier and more driven, more filled with purpose, as your relationships get better, as you make more money, because when you feel good, you make more money. You just do, you find ways. Abundance comes into play. Yeah. They're going to want that. So, you know, either that or it's going to be so triggering and they really do know, they know that they're not in a place where they're ready for that journey. Mm-hmm. It's going to break you up. So it could go either way. It's a risk you run taking, but at the same time, do you want to be, you can't be a fully evolved healing, it's never like healed, but you know, like fully evolved, you know, well-developed person, and be on that healing journey and be in a relationship with someone who's so unconscious and unhealed. You're just not going to be able to physically tolerate it. It's going to feel unsafe. It's going to feel like you're talking on 2 different languages, and it won't connect. So it's okay to leave that person behind. It doesn't mean that they won't jump on the elevator and meet you in some time when they're ready. And maybe it takes you saying, you know what, I think you need some space to really work on yourself because we're not understanding each other and it's hurting me and us, and I don't want to end this badly. Like maybe it needs some space, and maybe you need some time for them to really realize that they have to go on this journey if they want to be with you. And you have to hold your value at such a high vibration that you know you're worthy of that. You know, like you're worthy of someone exploring themselves and healing themselves and you being on the receiving end of that healed version of themselves. You're worthy of that. So holding that vibration that if it's not this person, it's another person. And there are other conscious people out there. And there are people who are just starting their journeys, who are in the middle of their journeys, who are at the end of their journeys, whatever, who need partners. So painful in the moment, but at the same time, if you're aligned, the alignment will find you in terms of your right partners, or your partner will step up to the plate because you know they don't want to lose you, and it makes it important, you know.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, what you just said, there's like a lot in there, but when you were talking about what you were sharing with him when you guys were in that, your face just lit up. And I'm like, but I think it's also you were so passionate about what you were learning that it wasn't like, so that you feel bad. It's more of like, oh my God, I learned this. Like, I just want to share it.
Yeah.
So it was more of like you were leading by example. You weren't ever shoving it down to him, like, you need to do this. It was more of like, hey, this is cool. I want to share this.
I won't lie. Like sometimes, like I'm not like this like holier than thou spiritual person. Sometimes I was like, get your shit together. I'm fucking leaving you. Like, I told 100%. Like that's not. Look, we're human beings at the end of the day. Like it's not always going to be like, let's have a therapeutic conversation. But most of the conversations can be pretty. Like if you can lead by example and you can do your best, like that's the best way to go for it. But of course, there are going to be a couple of fuck yous and a couple of like you're going to be a human being. You know, but I think ultimately, like, we can never tell anybody what they should do because people are sovereign beings and we know what we need, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. So it's more just like, all right, I'm just going to take the reins of my own journey and show people that it's not as scary as you think. You're not going to die. Like, it's going to be okay. And that actually the other end, the other side is so much fucking freedom that you're not, it's going to be so exciting. Like you're going to, of course you're going to want to have that.
You should be the spokesperson for anyone that wants to do.
Guys, this new trauma work is so fun.
You just make it seem so much more exciting and like, this is going to be again, that like Sagittarius, it's going to be an adventure.
Exactly. The adventure into the
under. And they're like, oh man. Like I laugh anytime I was talking to a client about this. Anytime we bring up inner child, she's like, I don't want to talk to her. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to you either. Why? And I'm like, did you just see that's how you're talking to yourself? Like, do you really feel like you would want someone to be like, I don't want to talk to you? And she had this moment of, oh my God. I'm like, yes, like it is the way that you are basically saying, hey, show up. I'm gonna close this up because I feel like we could literally
talk for like years.
I told you. Years. I'm gonna tell you right now, like I feel like I've known you at different lives, and I'm just like, oh, we're reconnecting. Don't leave.
We probably have. Like I full believer in all of that.
So am I, but it's more of I don't like. I normally get very. I need to be more professional because I'm talking to someone, but it could also be the dynamic. But you're just like, I feel like I'm catching up with a friend, even though we've never met. So I'm like, man, we had to meet in a past life.
No, and I think like this is the way I approach everything. Like the fact that I have I'm getting a doctoral degree, I have a master's degree, I have a bachelor's degree, I've done shit ton of certifications and training. I'm professional as fuck. I'm also me. So you guys like professionalism doesn't mean you then become a different person. Like please don't be that person. Like let's shift the paradigm and like allow professionalism to also exist with humanness. Because then you really get to shine when we're taking up brain space, being preoccupied of how we should present ourselves, we lose space and energy to actually tap into the genius that we're meant to share.
Ooh, man. Can you just like record stuff and like send them to me? I feel like that's just what I want. I just need you to like record things and send them to me, and I'll just be like, this is my daily dose of Gaby. Hello. Okay, great. I'm good to go.
My clients are always like, I hear you in my head whenever like I have a problem. Like they hear you chattering away. I'm like, good.
You always know that's a good sign if people say that. I don't have a therapist anymore. We're still in contact, but I still do therapy, like, because she's been in my life since I was 18, it's just a thing. So randomly I'll catch myself. I'm like, all right, good. What would you tell me right now? And I like answer for her and I'm like, I don't like that answer. Why can't you give me something else? And then like, I'm like, I'm talking to myself. Why can't I give myself a different answer? But it is. I feel like the people that really resonate on a soul level. You can hear them throughout. I haven't had a session with her in 3 years, and I can still hear her clearly in my head. And something I'm like, go away, stop.
It's that connection, that really like that beautiful deep connection where they can, you know, your therapist, your coach, whoever you're working with can be that positive projective identification, that positive mirror where it can mirror back to you what the healthy ego sounds like and, you know, the healthy self sounds like.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Gaby, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and share your story with everyone. It's inspiring doesn't cover it. I feel like inspiring is overplayed now, because I'm just like, no, that's not enough. One last thing before you go. Where can everyone find you? I know Coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, so on Instagram is where I have like my main community. So you can follow me at OM_therapy_coaching. I know it's a long one. I didn't think about that when I made it. I'm just trying to keep it clear, like therapy and it's holistic. So OM_therapy_coaching, www.omtherapycoaching.com. I have lots of stuff there. New website is launching soon with lots of resources with the alumni network we're creating. With courses, we have group programs for leadership, for business, and we specialize in empowering women or women identified individuals. So come on down, non-binary folks invited too. We just want to definitely create a space for humans who don't necessarily have spaces in these areas to really grow and thrive and feel safe. So come visit me. And if anything else, I have a podcast, the Conscious Leadership Podcast. Catch up on episodes, and I'm in your ear, YouTube, anywhere. You'll find me. Type in Home Therapy Coaching.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have blah, 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 blah. Wow, I can't speak now. I hope you have an incredible day. All right, guys, I will see you again next Tuesday for another episode. And you never know, we might have Gaby back. So keep hitting that subscribe button so we can get more viewers and keep this going. All right, have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.